Good afternoon, everyone. I'm David Forward, editor of Public Sector Catering magazine, and thank you for coming along to join us today for the latest in our series of The Future of Your Service. Today we're going to be looking at the care sector, and we're doing this in association with the National Association of Care Catering. As with every other part of the public sector, COVID-19 and the lockdown that it's involved has had an immense effect on the work that the care catering sector does, with plenty of challenges for them to try and overcome. But perhaps, especially the care sector amongst all parts of the public sector, it's also offered up some intriguing possibilities, some opportunities maybe for the future. And I'm thinking particularly of the Meals on Wheels service at this particular time. In a moment, we're going to play an interview that we recorded earlier this week with Sue Cawthray, the chair of the National Association of Care Catering, and this will be followed by a live Q&A session with Sue and three co-panelists, and of course you're invited to be part of this. So let's meet the panelists who will be joining Sue and I, and first we're going to go to Sophie.
Hello, good afternoon. I'm Sophie Murray. I am proud Deputy Chair of the NACC, National Association of Care Catering, and I have a day job too with a large care organisation as Head of Nutrition.
Excellent, thank you. And we're also joined by Anne.
Hi, my name's Anne Dudley. I'm the Catering Support Officer with Hampshire County Council. I look after a number of in-house care homes, and I'm also the Secretary for the South West region of the NACC as well.
All right, and we've also got Neil.
Thank you, David. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Neil Hargreaves. I'm the Divisional Manager for Care Homes at Apetito. We're a leading supplier to the care industry, and we're currently partnering with about 600 care homes to provide meals, serving about 20,000 residents every single day.
Great, right. Well, just before we get fully underway, it might be worth just reminding ourselves of how this webinar is going to work. Other than the four panelists and me, everyone else will be muted. So if you want to get in touch during the webinar, there are two ways of doing it. You can put a question to the panelists using the Q&A function. Make sure you use your name and company, please, when you add those questions. And please keep this two questions rather than just the statements. That'll help us to make the best use of our time today. You can post a question at any time. You don't have to wait for the video to finish. The other way to get involved is with the share a comment function. And to do that, you go into chat. And remember to choose the option to all panelists and attendees. We won't unfortunately be able to answer any questions you put into chat, but obviously that is a useful little informal side forum that can work amongst you during the webinar. Just before we run the webinar, the interview rather now, let me actually introduce Sue Cawthray, Chair of the National Association of Care Catering. She's actually in her second spell as chair, having previously served from 2007 to 2009. She's Chief Executive of Harrogate Neighbours Housing Association in her day job, and has been an NACC member for more than 18 years, having served also as Regional Chair and Regional Secretary for the North. In 2012, she led the NACC to gain the Guinness World Record for the most identical community meals delivered in 3 hours. Under her leadership, Harrogate Neighbours Housing Association launched Harrogate Food Angels, which was presented with the Queen's Award for Voluntary Service in June this year. She also advises other associations on the importance of extra care, community care, day services, luncheon clubs, and Meals on Wheels through her work with the Housing, Learning and Improvement Network for Yorkshire and Humberside, the Independent Care Group, and of course, the NACC. Right, now let's hear that interview with Sue.
Apologies, people. I don't think that video has been playing with sound. I'm going to start that again. Sorry.
Hello, and how are you?
Hi. Yeah, I'm good, thank you. Yeah.
Excellent.
Tired, but okay.
Well, let's get on with the questions then. You must be incredibly proud of the way the care sector has stepped up during the COVID-19 crisis. What, for you, have been the biggest challenges that you and your members have faced?
Sorry, it happens, doesn't it?
I think one of the key areas has been the way the guidelines have changed, and the confusion that we've had sometimes in knowing what we should and shouldn't be doing and where we should and shouldn't be. And I think that's been quite confusing for everybody, not just people in care catering. And I think because of that confusion, it has ultimately affected the way that we deliver services. And I think the members have, because obviously our members aren't just care caterers, but they're people within the sector. So it's been quite a challenge for them to ensure that we get it right all the time. And I think the other challenge for us has been PPE, and it's something which I've championed right the way through, because we've needed PPE for every service, for every area. So I think that in the beginning was a real challenge for us.
Okay. And how do you think the care catering service has changed during the lockdown? I mean, are your sort of guests being managed in the same way, or have there been changes in service methods?
I think everybody's had to be very innovative and creative in how we deliver our services, particularly where areas have closed, particularly in extra care and supported living. Care homes have also had their challenges because obviously the chefs have had to do things differently and deliver things differently. And they've had to adapt menus as well, because sometimes, I mean, we haven't had a shortage of food, but there have been some goods that we've struggled to get, particularly in the early days when we couldn't get flour and various things like that. So chefs have had to be creative and innovative, and we've had to think about how we deliver things. The Meals on Wheels service has increased because obviously more people are at home. So there have been a lot of Meals on Wheels services that have set up around the country who wouldn't normally do Meals on Wheels, but meals have been delivered from pubs and, Auntie Bessie's kitchen. So I think people have been very creative in ensuring that people are looked after.
Okay. Now, there is talk of a potential second spike in COVID-19 cases. What do you think the lessons the care sector has learned from the first time around that will help you to perhaps better deal with it if there is a second spike?
I think everybody, including ourselves, has ensured we got plenty of PPE. I think that was something that was because obviously, whether you're a member of the care staff or whether you work in the kitchen, you've got to have PPE. And if you're delivering food, you've got to make sure that you're doing it safely. So I think we've learned from that. I think we've all learned how to work together in a very different way, be understanding of each other, understand people's concerns, and look after people's mental well-being, and that we're all in this together, which is a challenge, but we've all had to work together. The spike, if there is a spike, and obviously some parts of the country already had a spike, we just got to get on with it as we always do and make sure we deliver the service well.
Okay, obviously a sort of key part of your operations for your members all around the country is the supply chain, and you mentioned supplies a little bit earlier. How has the supply chain supported the service over the last 6 months, and do you think the experience has perhaps strengthened relationships you have with suppliers?
Most definitely. I can speak both from a personal perspective and also from obviously my role as the NACC National Chair. So from a personal perspective, our supplier here in Yorkshire, they've been unbelievably supportive. They've helped us with our menus. They've also helped us with food for our clients. So we set up a one-stop shop, so we could put in orders twice a week and they would deliver everything. They've, again, instead of having to buy, a whole case of things, they split cases for us. So from our perspective, we've had tremendous support, and that's been really good. And our relationship has developed. And I know that's happened with other suppliers who are NACC members across the country, who've really worked very hard with people within the sector to ensure that they have not been let down with their orders, and just to be supportive and creative in delivering that service.
Right. Now, I'm going to ask you to sort of cast your vision forward a little bit over the next sort of year or two and see what are the major challenges you think will be facing care caterers over that time.
So I think one of the areas that concerns us all is the fact that some care homes have not managed to continue to stay open. So one of the areas which I think is going to be a real worry is, where are those people who are going to require services in the future, access to care homes, where are they going to go? So I think that's a huge worry that and it's not just now, it's over the next 12 months. We're not through it yet. We're facing huge challenges with the economy. So I think that's going to be a concern. I think we know that nutrition has been a huge issue with people who have had COVID. So that's obviously for us is a real push for us. But we need the government behind us to do that. And of course, the other area, as you know, is our passion is Meals on Wheels. So we know from my own perspective that Meals on Wheels there's been a huge surge in that service, but who's going to fund it?
Yes, that actually brings me quite neatly onto my next question, because the situation that we've had over the course of the last 6 months or so is the self-isolation of a large number of elderly, vulnerable people. And it's really thrown the spotlight onto the importance of food and delivery. And I just wondered if you had some thoughts about what that might mean for Meals on Wheels services. I mean, you mentioned the lack of funding so far, but do you think that there might be an opportunity to sort of try and leverage a little bit more now that everyone's seeing how important the service can be?
Most definitely. And as I'm sure you probably are aware, and I hope some of our members are aware, that there's the Malnutrition Task Force, which has wrote a letter to Matt Hancock to say we really need to focus on malnutrition and the issues after COVID. Obviously there's the Meals on Wheels Alliance, which the NACC is very active, so we are championing about how we can take that forward. So I think everybody's doing their bit, and I think if we come together, we're a greater voice. So I think that's really going to be really important over the next few months, that we really champion that, not just singly, but as big organisations together. Okay.
Now, I mean, a lot of attention has been put on the NHS and hospitals over the last 6 months. And they've generally got some sort of good, positive media coverage out of it. How do you feel the care sector has fared in the public eye?
It got better, I think, particularly on that one occasion that Matt Hancock wore his care badge. But we can't get complacent, because I think we'll very quickly go back to... It's not that social care's second-class citizen, but we've always been very much in the background of the NHS, and the two are as equally important. And I think that's really come to the fore during COVID of the effect that COVID has had amongst the people that are looked after through social care. So I think, again, we have to make sure that is maintained. It's really, really important. So again, through us working collectively together, we need to make sure that social care of the elderly is still very much on everybody's agenda.
Right. Now, the long-term impacts of the crisis are likely to affect pensions and savings, simply because of the economic impact of what's been happening. This could make it harder for people to afford personal care in the future. So I just wonder, following on from that, whether you see the potential for a shift towards perhaps more state-funded care, or do private care homes perhaps need to look at changing their business model to adapt to this?
That's a difficult one And I think we all wish that we had a crystal ball and we knew how it was going to happen. I mean, you know, there are always going to be people that need care, and we know that the population is growing for the elderly, and I think there's always going to be an issue over how it's funded. I'm personally, I'm not sure. You know, I think we've all got our personal ideas about how it should be funded and how it should. I don't know. Difficult question, that one, David.
Okay. Sorry, but sometimes I have to ask them. Yeah. Changing tack now. The NAC has given its support to the public sector catering 120% less meat campaign. I just wondered if you could tell us why, from your perspective, you think it's important to look at the cutting back the amount of meat in our diet and perhaps looking at buying better quality.
So I think the NACC was very keen to support that because, you know, at the end of the day, it's all about choice and people should have the choice. I think that people are far more health conscious now than they've ever been. And I think people look at where they get the best products, but also the balance. So it's about health. It's about making sure that people have the choice. And I think also it's about how we educate people as well, because not everybody understands about all the nutritional aspects. So if people understand that, you know, you can eat a healthy diet with a little bit less meat in your diet, then that's good. You can replace it with other things which are just as healthy and nutritious. So I think that's why the NACC was really, really keen. You know, it's about those two main things. It's about choice and education.
Okay. And last one, I just wanted to sort of throw a nice little one your way. If you could sort of wave a magic wand and get to ask the government for one thing to help the care sector, what would it be?
Oh, I wish it was only one thing, and that's really hard to choose one thing. I think that, you know, funding aside, it's about the awareness of the sector and the importance of the sector and what we do as a sector. You know, it's about how we make a difference to people's lives every single day. And, you know, our members, that's what they get up and go to work for every day, is to make that difference. And the only way we can do that is by people being with us and working with us. So I'd like the government to be aware of the great work that is done by our members and everybody in care catering, and how we need to continue to ensure that nobody loses sight of the fact that we need funding.
That's great, Sue. Thank you very much. That sets us up really nicely for the Q&A session to follow.
Okay, I think we're back live now. And before we got on to any questions that arise out of that, I'd like to ask our panel for their sort of thoughts about what they've just heard. Perhaps turning to you, Sophie, first, if you don't mind.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Well done, Sue. And having seen what's gone on in the industry, I absolutely echo what she's saying. And I think, as ever, there's an opportunity at the moment to be as innovative as we can and much health promotion as we can. So, yeah, well done, Sue.
Okay, thank you. Anne, how about you?
There's just so many areas I think that we need to cover, and we got the opportunity to promote with, as Sophie was saying there. You know, sometimes we've had to look at some different menus just because foods have been available. And actually, I think we've got a great opportunity now where we've got different people in our settings that have a much wider culinary taste, can we put it that way, where we have people that come from different sectors of society. And so that's a real opportunity to include, you know, more and less of different ingredients in our food to make it more nutritious and more interesting as well.
Okay, interesting thought there. And how about you, Neil?
Thanks, David. Thanks for a really interesting interview there at the beginning. Just to echo really around sort of catering, I think it's, you know, it's challenging 365 days a year. You what COVID has done has sent lots of additional challenges and curveballs into what is really challenging anyway, when you consider malnutrition, cultural preferences, allergens, dysphagia, etc. I think, from my sort of side, we've seen a lot of care homes, certainly in terms of that supply chain, reaching out to us at the beginning of the pandemic, so that March period, just to sort of reiterate what Sue said around supply. We had people reaching out to us who were really, really struggling with frontline wholesalers and supermarkets, not sure where to turn, what was a really challenging time for them. And I think it'll, carry on to be challenging, some of the things I've mentioned, but, as an industry as a whole, we've got operators working in partnership with us who are financially looking at their business model at the moment, looking at how they can be creative again and launch new initiatives so that they're fit for purpose moving forward. And what we've got to remember is we're still in the heart of the pandemic as well. So we're seeing lots of things around staff absenteeism still, isolation in some places in bedrooms for residents, restrictions in communal areas. There's a lot of challenges that we're still dealing with as an industry, what we need to tackle as a team on a day-to-day basis.
Okay. Thank you, Neil. We have to be perfectly honest to say that the questions haven't exactly been flooding in, but there's still plenty for us to talk about. And actually, before we talk maybe too much about the future of the service, perhaps, Sue, I can come to you about the role of the NACC itself, because you obviously had a little bit of a blow in that you've had to postpone your 2020 Training and Development Forum. I just wonder how the NACC works in terms of helping its members at this critical time when something as useful as the forum can't go ahead as a live event.
So obviously over the last few months, we have changed the way we work, as everybody has to. So in relation to our website, we've used that as an information platform for all our members. We've also set up lots of regional webinars so that our members can still access all our regional teams and can talk to each other and share ideas and be inspired. We've had cook-offs online, so that's been really, really good. Obviously, it was a huge disappointment to us that the TDF is not going ahead. As with a lot of the other key organisations across the sector, have also had to cancel their annual event. So what we will be doing over the next few months is having some more webinars with a more joined up approach so that we can really continue to support, because as my colleagues have said, the most important thing now is we're not through it. We've got a lot more challenges across, so how can we support each other going forward? And I'm hoping that by that method of the webinars and the access to information and support, the NACC can continue to support its members.
Excellent, thank you for that. I wanted to also talk a little bit about the area of training and recruitment. And Neil said that obviously you've been hit hard as a sector in terms of staff absenteeism for all sorts of reasons. I mean, people would need to self-isolate, people could actually be genuinely ill. But how do you cope with that on top of a sector that already struggles to recruit enough people to be able to do the job that needs to be done? Anne, have you got any thoughts on that?
Well, I have to say, from our experience within Hampshire, we have been recruiting, and actually we've had a really good response. I think because the rest of the industry has kind of been affected perhaps more so than care, because care's got to go on. We've still got to feed people, their homes are still opening. And so actually we've had really good responses to the adverts that we've been putting out. And I think actually that I really want to take this as a positive step, because I think it's a real opportunity for us to actually say, this is a really great sector of the industry, come and work in it, come and see what you can do. We don't have those crazy hours and split shifts and high pressures, but we really, so if you've kind of got that kind of caring nature inside you and you're happy to kind of retrain and take on that professional edge in a care setting, then I think there's some great opportunities out there at the moment for our sector.
Okay, thank you. Sophie, is that your experience too?
Yeah, I think it is. I think particularly as time's gone on, initially I think there was a lot of fear with care staff, and we probably saw a lot of sickness going. But I think equally with the amount of publicity about it getting to people's hearts and it affecting so many people, it attracted more attention. And also I think it was an opportunity for organisations to really care for their own staff and share how they cared. So I saw, for example, in our organisation, we got another car for staff transport, and we provided free staff meals so that staff could actually eat whilst they were on duty and be supported a little bit more. So I think, again, there's opportunities all round to try and be the best organisation you can be to attract truly caring staff.
Okay, right. Neil, if I can turn to you, through Apetito, you've got a bit of a foot in both camps in that you can supply meals, but you also help run Meals on Wheels services. We've got a question in about should resident spends be index linked to food inflation, and maybe you've got sort of a very good perspective in that regard to sort of talk about costs, budgeting, and what we should be paying for the food.
Yeah, absolutely. I think in terms of should it be linked to that, I think number one thing is that it should be linked to the resident's choice and what their likes and dislikes are and what's right for them. The service should be, personalised to them, and that's what it should be linked to. And the cost should be the fallout that the business has to absorb at the end of the day. That's really important. Interestingly, throughout sort of our customers that we work with, our partners in the care industry, we've always seen finances vitally important. As I think I alluded to before, at the moment we're seeing more and more of our customers coming to us to ask about longer term price increase, current tools to support them further through wastage, for example, as occupancy rates have been quite fluid over the last couple of months. Is elements we can do around wastage trackers and audits to support them. So to make sure they're offering that right service with choice, but also they're making sure they're doing it cost effectively as well.
Great. Okay, thank you. Sue, we've got another question in now. What the impact of the financial outlook will have on care catering looking ahead, especially with the potential exit, the exit from the European Union at the end of this year. Are you, as part of the NACC, looking ahead with any sort of idea about what might happen in terms of financing for your sector?
So one of the things that we're doing as a national exec is we're pulling together a strategy for the next 12 months. It's something which we started earlier on in the year, but obviously had to put on hold. So we need a strategy of how we're going to operate going forward. Again, it's very difficult to really get a good idea as to how the industry is going to change. I mean, obviously we know that the sector has changed because of suppliers and the demands that have been put on them. Funding's always critical, isn't it? And funding is really important for this sector. And as I said in my interview with you, we have to find ways of funding the service. And if we're going to have to lobby people, and if the NACC is going to have to lobby people to ensure that we've got funding across the whole of the sector, then that's what we need to do. And of course, COVID replaced Brexit, didn't it? And again, obviously the Brexit rules are changing as well, and we still don't know what's happening with that. So I think we just got to wait and see.
Okay. Anne, perhaps I can turn to you with this question here. A question coming in, someone's obviously got a little bit of concern about how the care sector will be able to cope should a second spike come along as predicted in the number of cases. Do you have any concerns on that score?
I think we can honestly say that we're all a lot more better prepared this time.
Yeah.
There's been a lot, and I think, even at the areas around PPE, obviously a lot of people, we would like to think maybe have some level of immunity, where we've had so many people have actually had it themselves as well. A lot of the areas of concern, I think, that people have had to put in around all this sort of hand washing and infection control, that actually was pretty much business as normal in care homes. I think it's highlighted that a little bit more, and people are more aware of that. So that's a good side. But I think, if we do have a second spike, don't forget we're also looking at our seasonal chest infections, flu, and all those other things that are coming up now. I think there's still a little, perhaps the fear is that which one have we got, how have we got, or how do we deal with it? But I think basically we are generally more prepared, and I think has just been shown in the care sector before, we have this huge resilience in all areas, and people pulling together to support each other, that really, we'll get through it. That's what we do.
Okay, right. On the question of PPE, obviously there wasn't really enough to go around, or enough to go around quickly enough right at the beginning. Sophie, is that still potentially an issue, or are you sort of fairly comfortable now with your ability to be able to source what you need in that regard?
I am probably working for a very fortunate organisation that we sourced it. We've got quite a very skilled procurement team, so we didn't actually have a shortage at all. But I certainly read about what was going on elsewhere, and I'm aware of what was going on elsewhere, and we were actually able to donate some of our PPE elsewhere. But I think that there is much more provision. I know with just reading the NHS alert this morning, it looks like the provision has improved, and we are better prepared than we were, definitely. Okay.
Neil, perhaps I can come to you now. Got a question in about, has anything positive come out of the pandemic? Is there anything in your experience over the last 6 months that sort of you can sort of put a positive spin on it and maybe might actually help things in the future?
Yeah, I'm so thinking about the catering. I think, as Sue mentioned in a video earlier, people have had to be creative and work differently. I think we're all agreed, and we're all massive supporters here, that nutrition is vitally important, and the dining experience is the highlight of the day in a care home, for that social interaction, the welfare for the residents. And actually, working with some of our customers, some of our initiatives, and some of their own, actually we've been able to carry on offering sort of different activities, but working differently. So, for example, we launched a sort of pen pal scheme, Welcome Words, where residents were able to write to each other in the same home, write out to family and friends or other residents in other homes within a group to keep that social interaction. That's proved to be really successful. Other things such as playing, games of bingo and quizzes in corridors when social distancing measures have to be in place. It's a case of looking at things and seeing it as an opportunity to work different. And we've had a lot of providers engaging with us on our different platforms to talk to us about how we can support them around that and the food, and try and keep that awareness and work with them around the menus and the activities to keep that social interaction alive. What really does, as I say, that dining experience, even if people have been in their own bedrooms or restricted in dining rooms, needs to carry on to be the highlight of the day for them. Yep.
Okay. Sue, we've got a question come in about the availability of certain foodstuffs, and the question really is essentially, have provisions been put in place to maintain supplies for the foreseeable future? Is that something that sort of planning, is that part of what you do and what your members are trying to do now?
I would like to think that our members are planning ahead. Obviously, as we all know, and as Anne said, we did have, there were certain foods that we were short of, particularly in March and as we went into April. But I think people have both suppliers and providers have thought about their stock levels and what they need. And I think going forward, everybody should now be in a position to have plenty of everything. And if we do end up with a spike, I think everybody, because we've learned so many lessons during this time, have learned how to plan their meals, plan ahead, and plan how they deliver the services.
Okay. Anne, we've talked a little bit about the provision of PPE, and that obviously sort of stops the spread potentially of the virus around a care home. But the question now, asking specifically about staff working within care homes and what you are now looking to do in terms of helping them to stay healthy and to avoid catching it, I guess.
Yeah, well, within Hampshire, all of our staff are required to wear masks or face coverings all of the time, regardless of which department they are in. Which you can imagine, for the chefs in the kitchen or the people in the laundry, you know, it's a hot, steamy atmosphere. That could be really quite challenging at times. So all staff are required, and the visitors that need to go to the care homes they have their temperatures taken on arrival to ensure that they are hopefully not unwell, provided with hand sanitizers and wash points, and masks are available for everybody that needs to come in the home. And we're also very much encouraging our staff, and particularly the people that are in the laundries and the kitchen, to have lots of regular breaks, to make sure they keep their fluids uptake. You know, they don't have to pay for their drinks or anything like that. I mean, we've been really lucky this year with such fabulous weather, so we can say to people, pop outside for a drink every so often. So there's lots of welfare around that side of it, certainly within Hampshire, and lots of support for the staff around wellbeing as well. So actually, from an organisational point of view, we're really lucky and well looked after. And certainly also with Hampshire, we do help to support the private care sector within the borough as well, within the county.
Okay, thank you. Sophie, can I just come to you now? Obviously, you've been well provisioned in terms of PPE, but what about the question of testing, which is very much in the news right now? Is it an issue for you? Are you able to do your own testing? Have you got your own arrangements? Is it a struggle at all?
No, at the moment we have got screening that goes on throughout all our sites with residents and staff. What I would say is the impact of it is absolutely necessary and it's reassuring, but there's still such a pressure on the industry with just the time it takes to actually screen. I'm absolutely behind it and I agree, but I think through all of our discussions in this panel, there is still enormous pressure on care sites. But no, we are fortunate with our screening programme, and also getting prepared for flu vaccinations coming up into the winter, and making sure that people are well looked after as far as that's concerned as well.
Okay. Neil, Meals on Wheels has been mentioned a few times. It's one of those services that's been in some sort of decline for a number of years now, but coming out of the experience of the last 6 months, we've actually seen how useful and beneficial it is, and not only people within the industry, but the wider public have become a lot more aware of just how useful this can be. Do you see any way that the Meals on Wheels service can start to sort of build itself back up again on this basis?
Yeah, first of all, a sort of caveat that I'm not the expert in the business on Meals on Wheels, but absolutely, we've seen, as the industry's seen, I think it's around 25% roughly growth in the service during COVID, and absolutely there's a huge benefit to that, and it's a much needed requirement out in the field. And I think outside of sort of elderly and vulnerable, I think there's been a growth around supporting people like homeless as well through the Meals on Wheels service. And in terms of moving forward, I think it comes back to the topic, what was the hot potato with Sue in the interview around the funding piece. I think, yes, we'd love to see that increase again. It's about keeping people in the home as long as possible before they move through the vicious circle of the healthcare and the care industry and everything else. But I think it comes back to really looking at that funding through the government to local authorities so they're able to put the service back in place again.
Okay. Anne, we've got a question here, or perhaps I could better express it as a sort of proposal almost, for the opportunities for the care and education sectors to work together to expand Meals on Wheels. Obviously, given the existence of so many school kitchens, is that something you could see that could work? And if so, what would be a sort of a way to get it started?
Certainly within my area, I don't have so much experience with that. That said, I do know some of the school side of our business has been supporting some local day centres and providing some meal services that way. In Hampshire, we do actually use Apetito as a contractor to provide our Meals on Wheels service. So we do provide a very wide Meals on Wheels service within the county. Could it go forward? I think there may be some possibilities for some small communities. I think we have to be careful because often what the schools are providing, the regulations they need to follow, the foods they buy, the skill sets, is very different to the care sector. And they sometimes can be quite contrasting needs, if you like, for the different things. But that said, I think certainly in those smaller areas and supporting the local smaller day services, I think there's some real opportunities there, definitely.
Okay, so, Sue, can I just get you to sort of perhaps contribute a little bit on this, because I know there were a number of stories during the real lockdown where schools were not only food to children who qualified for free school meals but were at home, but they were also doing it for elderly people within the community, perhaps who were self-isolating. Did you see any sort of possibility of the two arms, if you like, of care and education coming together to perhaps fulfil a need here?
I think it's an interesting opportunity. But I think, as Anne said, they're two quite different services, and I think we've got to be careful. What is a school meal may not necessarily be the same suitable meal for an older person. So I think there are opportunities, maybe more in the more rural areas, and whether we can use our expertise to support schools to do that. If we can work in collaboration with people, I think it's a great idea. We've just got to get it right.
Okay, all right. Sophie, got a question here from I guess someone who works with a sort of food or drink manufacturer. They're interested to know what sort of support and initiatives have you found most helpful from suppliers during COVID, and what would you like to see more of going forward?
I think there's been a lot of support around fortified products because malnutrition is such a risk and an increased risk around COVID. So there's been some fantastic initiatives around that. I think just being so responsive, sourcing products that we really, really needed in our absolute time of need and changing the way they worked. I couldn't praise the link we've had with suppliers more. That they were pulling all the stops out. The sale guys were getting in the warehouse to make sure that we had the products. I know one of our concerns at the start was around texture modified food, and if we had a skill set go down in the kitchen, we needed to ensure that we could still offer texture modified food to our residents with swallowing problems. And again, we just had a fantastic response from our supplier to take on a brand new product for us and make sure that we had it. So there's so many examples that's just a couple.
Okay, thank you. We've got another question in this time talking about kitchen equipment. I think looking for you to sort of look ahead to what sort of equipment you might need in the future if we assume that the service is going to have to adapt and change to the circumstances as they move on. Is that something, Anne, that you can foresee any particular changes in terms of the way your kitchens are equipped?
Yeah, this is a project that I'm very much working with actually in all of our kitchens. a lot of our equipment, as is a lot of care homes, is very old. And as we are replacing it, we're having a drive now to replace it with the much more modern, functional combi type ovens and equipment like that. And it's producing, it fits in with the manufacturer's instructions. It's becoming a standard industry practice. So actually, when we're attracting new blood into our business, that, you know, these guys are coming in and looking at equipment that they know and they're working with and they're comfortable with, rather than perhaps looking at an old-fashioned steamer and thinking, how am I supposed to use that? You know, so I think that that's really important. There's some really good kit around now from all the leading manufacturers now on being able to produce really smooth blended food to cover all our different ITSE levels. Lots of things, and also a lot of these manufacturers are now also really kind of getting online and able to give a lot of our care staff, care home catering staff, a lot of support on that as well. They support the NACC, they support care homes. It's just out there, and I think the more we can get that word around, provide these chefs with this equipment that they need and the training and the skills that they need as well, I think it's very much the way forward for us to be an area of choice really for it within catering. Absolutely, it's key. If you haven't got good tools, you can't do a good job.
Okay, fair enough. Neil, can I turn to you now? We've got a question about sustainability, and I guess it's one of those topics that sort of has tended to sort of drop down our sort of list of priorities over the last sort of 6 months or so, but still hugely important, isn't it?
Yeah, sorry, David, I was on mute there at the beginning. Absolutely, like you say, I think perhaps drop down the topic slightly, but it's something we're seeing more and more working with different care providers, being asked about our policies within our business and how we feel about that. Certainly for us as a business, we're really trying to push the boundaries and lead the way in terms of supporting the UK economy at the same time. And I think this will continue to grow in terms of the demand from the care industry over the months and years to come in terms of interest.
Okay, thank you. The thorny issue of funding, it sort of won't go away, and obviously there are no sort of magic money trees to be shaken, as we've been told. But I just wonder, Sophie, what, if anything, can the care sector and the NACC perhaps specifically do to sort of try and get a little bit more money from the government? Are there any sort of tactics or strategies you should be employing?
Keep banging the drum, keep raising awareness, and keep supporting people with smart menu planning. I know Neil was just talking about sustainability, and I feel really passionately about that as well, that we need to be mindful of it, but use it as an opportunity now to support local, support farmers, support the produce that we can get and go seasonal, and just get smart with money. Because I think sometimes when you actually drill down into menu planning, we're not always smart with spend. No. So I think that comes first before everything else. Look at waste as well, and just make sure we've been as smart as possible. And yeah, the more we shout loud, the more we attract the media towards us, the more we can have impact. Okay.
Anne, you mentioned about the sort of the growing number of different diets, in particular sort of ethnic and cultural diets, if you like, that you're going to have to sort of contend with in the future. How do you cope with that under the sort of the sort of budget restraints that are obviously part and parcel of the work that you do?
I think actually where we're seeing perhaps as a more interest in things like perhaps your pizza and pasta dishes, for example, then actually these are the high value foods. They are high carbohydrate foods, and we need to be making sure that our residents are having lots of protein rich foods particularly, and foods that are smaller portions but are much higher quality with regards to the nutritional balance. So it doesn't always have to be about spending lots more money on those foods. And where we have different people from those different ethnic cultures, actually quite a few of those will perhaps involve a bit more vegetarian food and vegan food as well, and not just using the likes of I'm allowed to say it, the corn products. So we can actually use different foods and combining foods to actually provide more protein in those meals as well. So I think it gives you that variety as well. Maybe perhaps thinking to somebody, we don't have to keep giving people sandwiches for tea. We could give them something different. We could give them a noodle dish for tea or something like that, which would be more exciting and probably easier to prepare perhaps and safer. So lots of variety in that way. And really just speaking to our suppliers and getting them on board and having more meetings with our suppliers so that the things that we buy more often, we're getting a better price against, and keep monitoring those prices with suppliers as well. They're all areas. Coming back to having that equipment right, of course, then we can produce things quickly, so we can actually, if suddenly we run out, we can produce quickly so we can keep our wastage down from that point of view as well.
Okay, thank you. Neil, I can see you nodding along there. Your Anne's along the right lines there, is she?
Yeah, I totally agree. I think it's, again, I think it's a comment that's been mentioned a couple of times from Sophie as well about menu planning, working smart, looking at the levels of calorific intake, protein, what was just referenced. You know, it doesn't always have to come from meat. There's lots of other good sources out there. And it's, you know, I kind of go back to the point I think I made earlier about working where possible with the residents to understand their likes and dislikes and their choices. This is their home at the end of the day. That's where we should start, and then look behind the scenes at how we make that possible, to financial constraints, to the nutritional values that are ultimately very important to aid recovery and energy. But yeah, it really comes down to working smart and considering them factors I've just mentioned.
Okay, thank you. In the last few minutes available to us, I just wanted to do a quick round of the panel, just to get their sort of final thoughts. And looking ahead a little bit, my sense today is that there is actually a sort of a fair degree of optimism and positivity about, and I'll be interested just to sort of get your sort of thoughts looking ahead. Sophie, can I put you on the spot first of all? Just your sort of thoughts in general about looking ahead for the next sort of year or two sector.
I think there's an opportunity for wider education around malnutrition, to absolutely bang the drum about malnutrition. I think there's more opportunities for us to get smarter on menu planning. I think there's opportunities for us to educate. There's an interest now, so we can jump on it. And everyone is concerned for their own health, aren't they? So I think people have an interest around nutrition, and it's a perfect opportunity to champion what we do. Excellent.
Anne, looking ahead over the next sort of year or two, how do you see things playing out, and what would you like the focus of attention to be on in your sector?
I certainly think, agreeing with everything Sophie has just said, but also very much this the education side of it, and actually putting that real respect back into the catering industry, particularly within the care side of that. I mean, the guys out there are doing a phenomenal job. It's not just about cooking a roast dinner or a shepherd's pie anymore. These guys are really highly skilled, and I think we really need to be pushing that to the forefront, giving them the respect they need and the recognition and the knowledge and the training to do all of that. And certainly in the same way that they really up the ante with the nurses and within the care sector, I think we really need to be pushing that side within the care catering sector as well, because, you know, as a nation, we're getting older, people are living longer, there's going to be more choices, there's a lot more dietary requirements that we're now having to deal with on a day-to-day basis, as well as all the food hygiene regulations, the allergen regulations, the ITSE that's coming in, all of that. And I think to get that respect into a sector that actually has been thought of as cooks and dinner ladies in the past, and now surpassing that, and actually are really, really professionally skilled people in their own right, and that really needs to be celebrated and recognised more.
Okay, thank you. Neil, how about you? Sort of optimistic looking ahead?
Absolutely. I think we've got to see this as a different way of forging new ways. I think I just want to reiterate that, you know, this is a team game and everyone's been doing a great job over the last few months. And actually everybody has a part to play in the home, whatever the role is, their position. You know, it's not just about creating the great food, but it's also that front of house, that experience as well. And I think, you know, just kind of reiterating about that educational and training piece, I think it's vitally important. I think in the home for all the different roles, I think that links then also into the awareness, the wider awareness about the care industry, the challenges on a day-to-day basis with catering. But actually, we're doing a really great job as a team, all of us together. I think we need to carry that on. I think in the next few months, again, we'll be poised with different sort of challenges from COVID. And there we say we've talked about Brexit as well. But I think if we carry on really focusing on what's important to the resident on a day-to-day basis from a nutrition and their well-being and that dignity piece, actually we can work together with industry experts to offer that level of training around some of the areas such as ITSE, as we've mentioned, specialist diets. And I think, yeah, being really optimistic, I think, you know, the industry is going to carry on to grow, the population's aging, and actually we're in it together as suppliers, operators, strategic partners, and actually working together, we can really carry on to improve the experience for individuals 365 days a year.
That's great. Okay. And Sue, only right that we leave the last word with you. Are you you got an upbeat message to leave us with as well?
I always see that that, you know, that there are always opportunities, and out of bad comes good, and it has been a very challenging time for everybody in this country, whatever sector they're working in. Just picking up from my colleagues, I think one of the things that really comes to the fore is respect. And one of the things that's happened, particularly in my organisation, is that we've all had to spend a lot of time together, and we've all got to know each other probably better than we'd ever had the opportunity to, because we've been together so much more. And we've also had a better understanding about how we all work together and what our job roles are. And I think if we can learn from that it's about how we respect each other and how we can work together going forward and be a stronger workforce, then that's going to be a really key opportunity for us in the coming months. Okay.
Right, well, that sadly brings us pretty much to the end of today's webinar, and I would like to thank Sue, Sophie, Neil and Anne, and to you all for joining us today. Just to remind you that the full recording of the webinar will be available on the Public Sector Catering website next week. And we will be back with our next look at the future of your service with a webinar on September the 24th, when Molly Shah, Chair of the PACE, Professional Association of Catering Education, will join us for a look at the challenges facing those educating the chefs and caterers of tomorrow. And lastly, a word of thanks to the suppliers who support the Public Sector Catering 100 group, and without whom events such as today's webinar would not be possible. You can see their names on the slides that follow. See you on the 24th. Goodbye.